Hi, this is Christopher Allen from SmokeLong Quarterly. Today we're celebrating the best flash fiction from the 21st century with W.W. Norton's Flash Fiction America. Hi everyone, this is the Flash Fiction America, the SmokeLong authors reading. We are so happy to have 11 of the SmokeLong authors in Flash Fiction America here today, 11 of the 12. Kara Werner is here, Patricia Quintana Bidar is here, Jasmine Soares, Aubrey Hirsch, I said it wrong again, didn't I? Nicole Rivas, Vanita Blackburn, Molly Giles, Nicole Simonson, Pete Stevens, Gwen Kirby, Gwen E. Kirby, I left your E off, Gwen, and Christopher Allen, that's me. I might read if we have time, but we'll talk about that. We are also excited and thrilled and honored to have the co-editor of Flash Fiction America here today to introduce the anthology for us, Sherry Flick. Hi, Sherry. How you doing?
Hi, Chris. I'm good. I'm excited to be here. I can't wait to hear these stories read aloud.
Neither can I. You know, I read them occasionally just to keep up with why they are so great. And I understand when I hear that people teach them. There are so many reasons for people to teach these stories. What is so great about them?
I thought what I would do to give you a sense of our goals for the anthology, I would read just a few little excerpts from the preface that I wrote. And of course, the goal for the anthology was to showcase the best flash fiction being published in the 21st century. You know, no big deal. And we feel like we got a great selection. So part of what we had to think about in this anthology, which is different from the others in the series, is this question, you know, what is America, right? Because that's in the title and everything. So part of what I said is social and political movements, plagues, floods, earthquakes, and hurricanes have come barreling down in recent years, the aftermath of which has become an opening up to how messed up and monumentally historically different we are from each other as we inhabit this country. Right. So part of what we were looking at trying to replicate is the tension of America and, you know, what's happening, what has happened, how we all fit together. And then our conclusion, what we found was a wide array of flash fiction pushing at form with nuance, grace, and grit, stories that kicked aside an America portrayed with limited scope. Authors who unfolded, unpacked, and clicked a flashlight into the attic of this country. What we found is that flash fiction is alive and well in the 21st century. And I'm very excited about these stories from SmokeLong because I think they really replicate what I just read aloud. And SmokeLong does such an amazing job, has historically done such an amazing job of promoting flash fiction and publishing this, you know, high quality work that has raised the standard across the country and the world, really. So I'm really excited that everyone could make it today. And thank you for your words. And yeah, let's go.
Thank you so much, Sherry. And so we have to say, so Dave Clapper founded SmokeLong in 2003, and Randall Brown was the editor for a while. Tara Laskowski was an editor, and a couple of other people really, really worked hard in the years before. And I didn't really come to the magazine until, or to the journal until 2014. So I feel like I have inherited such a special thing. It is SmokeLong is just over the years has been like a go-to place for a lot of people. And just want to make sure that you understand, it has been a labor of love from lots and lots and lots of different people. Here we go. Our first reader is Cara Verna. Cara Verna's fiction, and I'm pronouncing it in a very German way, probably.
I love it. I love it.
No, sorry. I was like, everybody's name is now German. Fiction, Werner?
Yeah, but you know what? It has such a lovely ring to it when you say it. So,
Oh, Cara Verna. Fiction and essays have appeared in Ninth Letter, Gulf Coast, The Normal School, The Los Angeles Review, Volume 1, Brooklyn, and elsewhere. She has received support from the Elizabeth George Foundation and the Mendocino Coast Writers Conference, and her writing has been selected for the Best Small Fictions, Best Microfiction, the Wigleaf Top 50, and obviously, the W.W. Norton anthology, Flash Fiction America. Her chapbook, Because I Wanted to Write You a Pop Song, is available from Split Lip Press. Everybody welcome Cara Verna.
yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for putting together the reading, and so happy that Sherry could join us too. All right, without further ado, this is David Hasselhoff is from Baltimore. You arrive finally on the California coast, and even though this is Northern California, you're expecting tan, leggy blondes and barrel-chested surfers. You're expecting red swimsuits and lifeguard stations and blinding white sand. You've brought your own red swimsuit, and you're expecting California to deliver. Here's what you get instead. Jagged cliffs covered in seagull shit. You get wet wind. You get big-armed, bearded men who ride Harleys and tight-eyed, wrinkled women who smell like lavender. You get a runny nose and damp feet in an icy ocean that couldn't care less about red swimsuits. It says, fuck you, red swimsuit. I'm busy tearing at land. I will tear until I reach the Atlantic. This is the news after 1,062 quiet miles, after one divorce, 2 yard sales, 4 months of double shifts, and a spate of Coors Light hangovers. With no idea how many hours drive it is to palm trees, you stop at the Roadhouse and get a room upstairs, number 7, with a lighthouse quilt. You get a shared bathroom at the end of the hall with a basket of toiletries from previous guests. This is better than standing in a Walmart in Montana choosing a brand of hairspray. Which is least likely to catch fire? You're happy not to have to decide. You are happy for leftover Aquanet. As a girl, you stood in that Walmart in Montana, pulling at your mother's skirt. You watched as she set a box of life back on the shelf, shut her eyes, and breathed out, California. You let go and tried to catch the word in your hands, tried to hold it between you, like it was something you could share. Downstairs at the bar, you find a book of matches with Mike and a phone number penciled inside the flap. You head outside and use one of the matches to light a cigarette, a Virginia Slim, which you feel you deserve for having come a long way. You dial Mike, and when he answers, you say, convertibles. He says, hello, who's this? You say, I can see cars, but no convertibles. I see a chapel and a feed store and a community center and 3 teenagers walking to the cliffs, and not a one of them is rollerblading. He says, you're still at the bar. Stay there, I'm coming. He arrives and he is handsome. Blue eyes, black hair. He's a big-armed, bearded man, and he is looking for someone else. You show him the matches and ask if you'll do. Let's walk, he says. And the 2 of you head out through a field to the edge of the ocean. You tell him you are not trying to find your mother, and he shrugs like it's not for him to say. He says, what I know is this. The bartender from Nebraska will let you smoke inside during the Tuesday night pool tournaments. The cook from Kentucky will make grits on cold days, even though they're not on the menu. The taxi driver from South Dakota drives drunk after 7 p.m. And he says, don't know dick about surfboards, but I can mix you a margarita. I can shine your shoulders with oil. Nebraska, you say. Kentucky. South Dakota. You say, I'm trying to find California. He scratches his beard. Which is what, he says, Hollywood? David Hasselhoff? How about you ask him where he's from? The non-rollerblading teenagers begin setting off fireworks, and you try to remember if today is a holiday. Mike's face turns orange, purple, white as he watches. You tell yourself you'll kiss him when the number of explosions reaches 101, the highway you're to take south in the morning. You're counting 84, 85, 86, and you're smoking faster and laughing harder, and he's daring you to strip down and wade in. Go all the way, you say, and you unbutton and unzip, push down and pull off. Mike whistles as you tramp over sand that might as well be snow, your body illuminating under the bursts. You push into that angry ocean, the cold whipping your thighs, cementing your lungs, your mouth sucking the night for air. An oncoming wave readies to bury your head, and your arms butterfly forward. Your feet kick free of land.
Thank you so much. Sorry, I'm all choked up. Yeah, what a great second person narrative. And it's so hard to get it right, and you nail it. Thank you so much, Kara.
Thank you.
What are you up to these days?
Mostly I'm on a hiatus. I took a job that has demanded everything, so I haven't been writing all that much, but hopefully I will get back to it.
Hell yeah. Okay. And I feel the same way about myself because I'm doing more editing and teaching right now. But it is so great to be featured in Flash Fiction America, isn't it? It's like it makes you feel like I'm writing right now. Yeah.
Right.
I feel it. Yeah, yeah. Okay, great. I love that story, and I always go back to it. All right. Our next reader is on staff at SmokeLong, actually. This is Patricia Quintana Bidar. And I know I'm pronouncing everybody's names very like
it.
Thank
Do
you.
German.
Yeah. Patricia Quintana Bidar is a Western writer from the Port of Los Angeles area. Her work has been featured in Wigleaf, SmokeLong, The Pinch, Pigeonholes, Flash Fiction America, obviously, the Best Small Fictions 2023, and Best Microfiction 2023. She is a submissions editor at SmokeLong and a prose reader for Quarterly West. Patricia lives with her family, an unusual dog, outside of Oakland, California. Her first collection of short fiction, Pardon Me for Moonwalking, will be published by Unsolicited Press in 2025. Welcome, Patricia.
Thank you. And this is my story. Over there. Charles, I want to tell you one thing about this story, just one thing, and that is that the speaker is a man. Always forget to mention that. Charles is my blood, and what he feels, I feel. From the overhead vent, a soft breeze cools the sweat of his neck. I experience the small blessing of it, seeing him lean soft arms onto the checkout counter. My brother is dressed in the same black suit he wears to all our dinners. Charles is bald-headed like me, although my bony pate is covered in the way of middle-aged men and ball players like the young Turk I saw near the refrigerator section of this CVS in a ball cap. The cashier assumes my brother and I are strangers. It's true we haven't greeted each other. Before him on the counter is a cheap lime green phone charger. It's clear he's been here a while. The cashier beckons me to the second register. Charles regards the charger. What happened? I call over. The cashier is ringing up my eggs, bacon, bottle of wine. I'm using CVS as my market, also my bank. I press the button that says that adds $20 cash back to my tab. My charger, I just bought it this morning, my brother says, looking past my face. It was stolen from the coffee shop. Your phone charger was stolen? Now it comes to me, my brother's smell. The greasy suit, the unwashed hair. A small line is forming. The cashier gives a little huff. I told you, sir, it's about $11.95 with tax, she tells Charles. I'm alert to the small note of irritation. It isn't often I am witness to my brother's lived and public days. Are you at the shelter over near the church? I continue, sliding my card back into my wallet. The cashier shakes her head. She wears those gigantic bamboo-style gold hoops that were popular 20 years ago. The kind that have to be hollow since they aren't elongating her lobes. I know our conversation can wait. Charles and I are meeting for an early dinner. It's just happenstance we're both here at this CVS across the parking lot from the coffee shop, where apparently Charles spent at least part of the afternoon. I've bought the wine, the breakfast supplies, as kind of a reward for myself, I guess. A way to recognize my immense humanitarianism, meeting my brother at a neutral location to buy him a patty melt and some coffee, which he'll ask to have refilled at least 5 times before we shake hands goodbye. My big brother also smells of urine. Who wouldn't? Could you? The cashier gestures to the line. I think he's next, I say, leaning over to palm Charles the 20. My brother gives a brusque nod, passes wind. Isn't it the strangest thing how a person's farts can smell exactly the same years after years and miles and the horribly timed breakdowns? Yeah, no, the Berkeley shelter. Took the bus. He flashes the flip phone as if to show the cashier, me, and the line of tired workers who are waiting that he does have a machine to be enlivened by the charger. I start for the door. Gotta have a phone, says the young Turk in the baseball uniform. Kindly, I want to believe. I startle when the glass door emits its electronic chime. My brother is the first to guffaw. Yo, Charles, I call back to my brother. He gives me a little half salute that was a thing of his in high school. Our yearbook mentions it under his photo. I'll see you over there, man. I have a couple minutes to pop my trunk and deposit my bounty. Wine to soothe me after our visit. I'll empty the bottle, imagining my brother telling the bus driver, then his dorm mates at the shelter about his brother, hooking him up with a brand new charger and a princely meal. All the coffee he wanted. I'll still be thinking of him when I awaken in the morning, temples thumping and gauze-mouthed. I'll think of my brother's half salute as I fry up my bacon and eggs, grease seeping into my clothes.
Thank you, Patricia. So what are you up to these days, Patricia?
These days, thanks to SmokeLong Summer, I have some drafts that I'm very excited about that I'm itching to return to, but I'm being patient and letting them sit for a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
So that I can return to them fresh, because I'm putting together a chapbook and I want very much for these stories to be in it.
All right. Yeah. So wishing you lots of success with that. Win a nice prize there for you. Okay.
Thank you very much for having me.
Our next reader is Jasmine Soares. Jasmine Soares is also teaching an Afterglow webinar for SmokeLong, webinar event for SmokeLong. And it will be great, as always. Jasmine Soares is a Kundiman Fellow and Indiana University MFA alum. Their work and creative nonfiction has appeared in such journals as Plowshares, Foglifter, and Wigleaf. Their book, The Anchored World, was a finalist for the 2023 Penn Robert W. Bingham Prize for debut short story collection. They serve as an associate fiction editor for Fairy Tale Review and teach creative writing outside of academia, sometimes for SmokeLong. Originally from Buffalo, Soares lives in outside St. Louis. Hey, Jasmine, how are you?
I'm all right. I hope everyone else is all right too.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I would ask what you're going to read for us today, but I know of that already.
It's almost like you picked it for.
I did.
One of your issues.
I did.
If anyone wants to read along, it's page 213 in Flash Fiction America. It also appears in my book. It's called All Your Fragile History. I got this DNA test for my dog because he looks like a cloud and he looks like a luck dragon and he looks like something your lint roller picked up when you banged it around under the couch for the first time in 3 years. And I was sick of people asking, sick of having no answer when they did. So I followed all the directions on the packet. I got him first thing in the morning, before he could take a sip of water, before he could go lick the other dog's eyeball, before he could root around the other dog's asshole with his tender pink snoot. I got him and I swabbed his gums while he jerked to and fro like a malfunctioning Furby, and I stuck the Q-tip in the test tube and sent it back to New Jersey, postage paid, no problem, and I sat back to wait the appropriate amount of time for some lab coats to put his elementals in a centrifuge and spin them around until they could draw out all the threads of him and look at his heritage as if it were a map, as if they could build him his own family tree, as if they could slot him into some ongoing canine narrative and say, his people left France in 1647 and roved across the English countryside before boarding a ship to Mexico. It all makes sense now, how he makes that weirdo monkey sound, how he howls and shakes when he's excited, how he shrieks when you approach the door to leave him. And anyway, it took 2 weeks exactly, and I woke up to an email telling me he was not half cumulus, half cryptid, but half rat terrier, a quarter miniature poodle, a quarter chihuahua, and I looked at him and I said, Huckleberry Finn, you have never caught a rat in your life. And he looked at me and didn't say anything. I assume because he was ashamed of his failures as a vermin exterminator, and I assume because he wanted to make a point about my hypocrisy walking around with this face and not getting a DNA test myself. But let me tell you, white people love to take DNA tests. White people love to parcel out what kind of white they are. White people love discovering less than 1% sub-Saharan African or 3% Native American on their rainbow pie graph summaries. White people love to tell other white people that they come in all different shades and they can portion out their blood in riveting fractions. But when they ask me what I am and it's a day I happen to answer, it's always, Thailand? I hope you get liberated from China soon. Or, no, you're Indian, don't lie. Or, oh, I'm so jealous you never have to go tanning. And wouldn't you know it's worse when I tell them I too am cobbled together of fractions. I too am white enough to want to spit into a beaker to find out if I'm 1/4 Irish or 2/5 French. Wouldn't you know it's worse when they say, oh, you do look white. You're actually really pretty. Or you're so dark for only being half. Or are you sure you're not Indian? Wouldn't you know it's worse to fear you will be unmoored should you spit into that beaker only for a stranger to be spat back out shouting Italian, Indonesian, Greek, Vietnamese, Swedish, waving a flag you don't recognize, singing a language your tongue can't curve around, loosing the tether to all your fragile history as if a single PDF has the power to cleave you from the memory of the burst of mangosteen across your tongue. The touch of your grandma's hand as she helped you whisk the German chocolate cake batter, the way Thai and English merge in your mouth to crack out interlingual puns, the way your mother decorated the Christmas tree with garlands of jasmine blossoms and a slender Buddha up top, the way your eyes glint green in a certain light, the way your grandma said Davenport and saved used Ziploc bags, the way your grandpa said, I just want to help someone and let you hammer nails into blocks in his woodshop, the way you slipped between buildings and under scaffolding to find a bustling halal restaurant cooking kalmuk in a wok the size of a bathtub, the way the street vendor in Bangkok asked your mother, is that child half white, only to jack up the price when the answer was yes, the way your brother hid his birth name from the kids at school because if they knew it, they would run around chanting ching chong, the way you've been called the N-word and a chink and a gook and a slant and a spick, the way you've been called the perfect Asian student, the way you've been told to go home, the way you used to scrub your skin until you were one big livid pink abrasion, hoping the color would rub off with the blood, the way you look for evidence of belonging, the way you look in the mirror, the way you look.
Thank you. Thank you, Jasmine. That is one sentence. So also all of these stories have layers and layers and layers and layers. And I think that's one that's not quite apparent unless you're actually looking at it on the page, right? Because we don't like talk punctuation. What are you up to these days, Jasmine?
Like others, I seem to be on a hiatus. Had a bit of a difficult season over the summer that probably won't end. In theory, I'm trying to get a novel off the ground. So I'm only interested in the very short or the very long.
Okay. So either 400 words or 400,000 words. So yeah. Around there. Okay, good. Well, we'll be looking for it.
Thanks.
Our next reader is Aubrey Hirsch. Aubrey Hirsch is the author of a short story collection, Why We Never Talk About Sugar, and a flash fiction chapbook. This will be his legacy. her stories, essays, and comics that we all see on social media all the time, they're great, have appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, Time Magazine, American Short Fiction, Black Warrior Review, and elsewhere. You can find her on Instagram at Aubrey Hirsch. Aubrey, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Excited to be here, hearing these wonderful stories. My story is from my flash fiction chapbook. This will be his legacy. That is a fictional stories about historical figures. So this one's about Amelia Earhart, and it's called Amelia. Amelia hates it when people call her Amy. Amy is her mother's name, she tells them, and her grandmother's name, and she is nothing like them. She is educated. She is a career woman. She wears pants and a leather jacket and has short hair because she is a flyer. And Amy, they are helpless wives of alcoholics, dragging their children behind them like designer luggage through the clatter of empty whiskey bottles. She also does not want to be called Mealy anymore. It is an unfortunate nickname. It conjures images of undercooked oatmeal and apples that have sat too long in the blue bowl on the kitchen counter. It reminds her of the time she rode her sled off the roof of the farmhouse. She spent a moment on the ramp, angled toward the clouds, then a long beat in the air, flying. It was the same stomach-dropping feeling as being at the top of the arc on the swing set, the moment when the chains go slack and you just fall. And then the hard smack of the ground, her dress torn, her elbow bleeding, her molar turned to powder in her mouth. She shifted it around with her tongue, rubbed it against the roof of her mouth. Mealy. The students in her class called her the girl in brown who walks alone. That's what they printed under her photo in the yearbook. Maybe she wouldn't have been alone so much if any one of them had had half a brain, or even a quarter of a brain she could work with. But the girls at school were mindless idiots. They were just looking to get out of high school, get married, have baby after baby until they get a boy to carry on the family name, and die having learned nothing more than they knew in high school. Amelia filled a binder with images of women doing men's jobs and doing them well. Scientists, doctors, a mayor in New Jersey, a pilot. And look at her now, 10 world records under her belt. Now she is attempting her biggest stunt yet. The papers say she is the first woman to attempt to fly around the world, but she knows better. She is looking for more than good press. Amelia really doesn't like being called Mrs. Putnam. She'd rather be called anything else, including almost all of the cuss words. When the reporter from the New York Times captioned her photo, Mrs. Putnam, she was so mad she couldn't see straight. George smiled, a wide, beaming smile. "What do you think about that, Mrs. Putnam?" he said. She would have pitied him if not for the searing heat suddenly cloying at her brain. "I don't know, Mr. Earhart," she spat back. He struck her, the only time he ever did. She knew then that she'd have to leave him. She rubbed her flushed left cheek. It would happen soon. She would board the Electra and never look back. A.E., she doesn't mind so much. She could make a fuss about society reducing her whole being to 2 letters, but she doesn't. She concentrates instead on her flying. It is her escape. She takes Canary, her yellow biplane, up to 8,000 feet, where even the air she breathes feels different. Up there, her busted sinuses magically clear, her headaches evaporate like dew and hot sun. No one is as fast as she. No one can follow her up this high. This is where she gets away. This is how she will get away. Amelia is what she really wants to be called. Fred Noonan, her navigator, calls her Amelia. "Amelia," he says, "we should start sending the signals now. We're about 300 miles out." She nods at him, takes his hand. He calls in their coordinates as if they are heading for Howland Island, but they are not. They are flying toward Gardner Island. It will be lonely there, but beautiful. Fred is a marine man. He can make them shelter and find them food, fishing in the island's big lagoon. She has nurses training. She will keep them safe and healthy. Her hair will get long. Fred will grow a beard. There will be no whiskey and no stupid girls and no grandmother telling her to wear a dress like a lady. Every morning she will wake up naked as the day God made her, to the feeling of warm wind on her face and Fred's sweet voice in her ear, whispering, "Amelia."
Thank you so much. As I read this, I keep thinking, what an interesting list story. Actually, it is like an extended list story. And if you don't actually pay attention to that, you might miss it, actually. And I love how the ending is the future. Thank you so much. That is a classic at SmokeLong, and we hear people teach it all the time. What are you up to these days in Westchester County?
Well, I'm mostly making comics these days.
Mhm.
I'm actually working on a collection of short feminist comics that I can't talk about now, but next week I could talk about. So watch out for that if you follow me.
Let's do this next week. We'll just come back and do it next week.
You can all come back next week. We can talk about that.
Okay. Well, we'll be watching social media to hear the news. Okay. All right. Our next reader is Nicole Rivas. Nicole Rivas. There. Just a second. Oh, my cursor. Nicole Rivas. She, her, is a prose writer with stories anthologized in the Best Small Fictions, Best Microfiction, and obviously W.W. Norton's Flash Fiction America. Her first full-length short story collection, Tenderhoof Stories, is forthcoming from 30 West Publishing in 2024. For more on Nicole and her writing, you can visit her at www.nicolemrivas.com. Put an M in there. Hi, Nicole. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. And you're going to read Hatched. I don't know. I feel bad now. It's one of my favorite stories. Yeah. And it is interesting, the point of view from the story. Who's telling the story?
Yeah, so we have sort of a nameless narrator who is living out of her car, and
okay, so the narrator is the person living out of her car.
Correct. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. So go ahead, read for us.
Awesome. And if anyone's following along in the collection, I'm on page 216. Lily agreed to have dinner with me in my car. She wanted to see how I lived, and I wanted to see if she could handle it. When she arrived, I was checking my eyeliner in the rearview mirror. She knocked on the passenger's side window with the blunt edges of her painted fingernails. In the crook of her arm was a wooden bowl covered in plastic cling wrap. I unlocked the door, reached across the passenger's seat, and let her in. I love hatchbacks, she said, placing the bowl on top of the dashboard. I used to have one for a while in college. It's surprisingly comfortable to sleep in, I said. Oh, I slept in mine a couple times, too wasted to drive home after parties, I think. If I'm remembering correctly, she continued, I wouldn't describe it as comfortable. Fair, I said. Lily poked me in the arm. She wanted me to lighten up. Is that salad? I asked, pointing to her wooden bowl. Greek, she said. Great, I'll put some music on, I said, and reached for my phone with my sweaty hands. I scrolled aimlessly, unsure of what Lily would want to listen to. Superficially, she seemed much different than me. She was 9 years my senior, grew up in Ohio, and worked as a graphic designer. I knew nothing about Ohio or graphic design. I'd met her at a coffee shop 3 weeks ago. Unlike me, Lily was an oversharer. She told me she dated lots of women throughout her life, but also some men. She'd given a baby up for adoption when she was in college. Said she still thought a lot about the child, who is now a teenager living somewhere in Minnesota. Where do you keep all your stuff? She asked. She shifted her body to peer into the back seat. All that was there was a Tupperware container filled with paper plates, plastic spoons, and plastic cups. She seemed to expect piles of clothing, books, toiletries, the sorts of things that make people human. In the back, I said. Then, acknowledging my half-lie, I continued. Also, under the car, well, when I have guests, there's a lot of clutter otherwise. She smiled. And what's for dinner? She asked. I observed her smile. It reminded me of my mother's mouth when she also sat in the passenger's seat, cracked and drained of life. Part of Lily's discomfort, I knew, was her frustration with my reticence. I hadn't told her what college was like, wasn't eager to share anything about exes or family or traumatic experiences. These things didn't make me feel any closer to people. In fact, they made me feel more alone than ever. Macaroni and cheese, I said. How do you make that in a car? Lily asked. I make it outside on a camping stove. I said, it's easier when it's not windy. Wow, she said. Yeah, I said. I opened my car door, walked to the back seat, and removed the bowl of macaroni and cheese. Do you have tongs? Lily asked, watching me. Something to serve the salad? I forgot to bring anything. I looked at Lily and she looked at me. Her eyes seemed to narrow, harden, shrink. I think I have something under the car, I said, but it's under the car. We can look, she said. No, you don't have to. To what? Lily asked. You know what I mean, I said. I don't, she said. The car, everything, I said. I mean, we can look, she said, opening the passenger side door. I placed the macaroni and cheese on the dashboard. Outside, Lily was already on her hands and knees, pulling Tupperware containers out from beneath us. A duet of scraping and sighs as she maneuvered around on the cold ground. Lily wasn't even close to where a pair of tongs would be. I told her so, but she continued. She was in a box of socks and underwear, in a small bag of knitting yarn, in a Ziploc baggie of egg remnants from the one chick I'd seen hatch on my grandfather's farm. Then she was reaching into a cookie tin filled with photos of old lovers. She pulled out a Polaroid photo of breasts I hadn't seen in person in 3 years, tossed it aside. Stop, I said. But she didn't stop. Next were my lucky coins, my childhood stamp collection, a series of state-themed magnets for the fantasy version of myself that owned a house with a kitchen and a refrigerator. Then another bin, my dead dog's collar, expired Acne prescriptions, a vibrator the shape and color of a skyscraper. She tried to turn it on, but the batteries were dead. And still further, an older container. One box of journals from the past 10 years, a suicide note no one but me had ever read, a stack of therapist business cards with numbers I'd never called, and so on. She scanned the letter, nodded, and placed it aside, kept digging. I shivered and got back in the car. I could see Lily's calves and shoes protruding from beneath me. I pressed my car horn. She sprang up, dusted herself off, put her hands up, as if to say, what gives? But my foot was already heavy on the gas pedal by then, the sound of crunching over boxes filled with trinkets and paper, etc. In a brief moment of regret, I glanced at Lily's form in the rearview mirror. She had found the tongs after all. She was already using them to sift through what little remained of me. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. All I'm going to say is yep. Okay, I'll say something else. The invasion of Lily, I just really, it's so affecting. Thank you for that story. What are you up to these days?
So putting the final touches on my short story collection, which is coming out in January. And otherwise, and that's through 30 West Publishing. Mm-hmm. And otherwise, kind of drafting a novella. That's about as long as I go. So
okay.
Working on that.
All right. Well, okay. So we're really, really looking forward to the collection coming out. Is there a flash in it?
Yeah, there's lots of flash. I'd say the majority of what's in there is flash, actually.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Our next reader is Vanita Blackburn. Vanita Blackburn has appeared in the New Yorker, Harper's, McSweeney's Story Magazine, the Virginia Quarterly Review, and the Paris Review, and others as SmokeLong Quarterly. Obviously, she was awarded a Bread Loaf Fellowship in 2014 and several Pushcart Prize nominations. She received the Prairie Schooner Book Prize for Fiction, which resulted in the publication of her collected stories, Black Jesus and Other Superheroes, in 2017. In 2018, she earned a place as a finalist for the PEN Bingham Award for Debut Fiction, finalist for the NYPL Young Lions Award, and was a recipient of the PEN America Los Angeles Literary Prize in Fiction. Blackburn's second collection of stories is How to Wrestle a Girl, 2021, finalist for the Lambda Literary Prize, and was the New York Times Editor's Choice. Her debut novel, Dead in Long Beach, California, will be published in January 2024 and is about the mania of grief, all of human history, and a lesbian assassin at the end of the world. She is the founder and president of Live Right, an organization devoted to offering free creative writing workshops for communities of color. You can find them at her website or just liverightworkshop.com. Her hometown is Compton, California, and she is an associate professor of creative writing at California State University, Fresno. Are you still an associate professor? I thought we updated that. Are you? Tell us something
that is
new.
an update. I went from assistant to associate.
All right. Okay.
Right in the middle.
Yeah. Congratulations, and read something for us.
All right, you got it. I'm sorry I sent you my entire CV to read.
Yeah. I read fast. It's okay.
All right, so I'm going to read Chew. We chew in our family. It's our God-given freedom to chew what and when we want. I chewed the legs off my grandmother's piano. It keeled over and crushed her 13-year-old Bichon Frise ginger snap. My granddaddy laughed his ass off. Me and my brothers used to chew shapes into things all the time. We turned straws into palm trees. I made a lily out of a milk carton from my brother's girlfriend. I had to be careful around the seams and not use too much saliva or it would have turned to oatmeal. He busted my lip for that one. My boy is just like us. Can't keep his teeth off things. He chewed a plastic coin into a funny shape and supposedly threw it at some girl. They suspended him for 2 days for a plastic coin. I had to sit in front of the superintendent with his blood-red hangnails while he read off a statement from a teacher. Because of the zero tolerance policy, suspension was warranted after the disruption caused by the object. The student chewed a coin made of plastic until it resembled a bullet and threw it yada yada while yelling bang bang blah blah repeatedly until the situation escalated or some garbage. I had to sit there for 39 minutes looking at that shitstorm of a desk. It was metal and the color of every dull memory I ever had, just covered in papers, papers, papers. He held his palms above the papers and patted the air as if disgusted, as if afraid to touch anything because he knew it all linked to him somehow. One wrong move would topple it and he'd be late for some god-awful appointment or something. I told him to let's just get right down to it. He sighed like he'd heard the story a few too many times from the teacher, from the principal, from that big-haired news anchor, and his own bosses probably. Still, he needed to hear the story right from my boy. So that's what happened. My boy told the truth of it. I told my boy to be out with it because he stayed quiet because kids don't know what to say without a question. What happened? I asked. I chewed a shape the teacher thought was bad. She made me go to the principal, and then she brought out my stuff and called you, Dad, to come get me. That's what he said. The superintendent dared to look at me like I coached him, like my boy is so acutely aware of my breathing and knew every inhale and internal body gurgle and could tell the good from the bad. How was he supposed to know what gesture meant certain doom and what meant good job, son? But he said it right anyhow. I never threw it at no one. My boy told me about that crooked-eared girl who teased him all the time about his dirty cuffs. I told him never wash your cuffs for a girl. If she can't love your grease and grit, she can't love you. Well, he washed his damn cuffs and got more teasing for the trouble. That's when he chewed the shape into the coin and supposedly threw it. I knew he wasn't trying to make a bullet and pretend to kill that girl. That's crazy. I told him to tell that pudgy superintendent what he was really trying to chew in that fake money. I was trying to make a rocket. I chew rocket ships and I like guns and tanks and I was just trying to draw a rocket, but it turned out to look more like a small bullet than a rocket, and the teacher just thought it was a bullet. The teacher just thought it was a bullet. Boys that age chew all kinds of things. I must have chewed a cock into the side of a cereal box 100 times before I knew what it was for. Boys just celebrate themselves, you know. It's human. But the superintendent didn't get it. He just sat there on his wide secretary's wood chair thinking, your boy is an unholy wretch that will grow up to hurt people. The world is going to have to kill him someday. He'll embarrass you and drive you indoors for good. You are an enabler. You think you're helping, but you're reinforcing terrible behavior. There are volumes of books written, studies done, talk shows even about you and your boy. There will be nowhere safe to drive to except hills with no life on them. The superintendent blinked. He looked at the stacks of pink and yellow papers, folded and crinkled, some thin as spit, and blinked. What right did he or anybody have to judge me and mine? They call it enabling. I'm enabling my son to keep on with his bad behavior. They just don't understand our lives. Maybe he did chew a bullet on purpose and throw it and push her down and kick her until she cried. We all chew to survive in this world. My granddaddy chewed up until his last days on this earth, a little foil applesauce lid. He made a teacup for my grandmother. I heard she told him to swallow it for being such a mean bastard all his life, but that's just how they loved each other. Everybody else can't know what it's like to put something in your mouth and have something different come out, what it means, the power. They just want to take it from us, keep us docile like starved dogs. They don't know anything about how we live, love, and die. My boy is innocent. My boy is gifted. That's it for me.
Thank you, Vanita. I could listen to you read forever. So tell us, your novel's coming out in January. Are you done with edits?
It's done. The whole thing is done. I'm listening to the audiobook auditions and things, and I'm loving it. So one of them just made me cry. The whole book just made me cry. It's funny, but it's a punch.
Hey, do you have an exact date in January?
No, it's not a specific date yet. So it's supposed to
Okay.
be, winter 24. So they told me January, but I don't have the date yet.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye out for it. Our next reader is Molly Giles. Molly Giles' second novel, The Home for Unwed Husbands, has just been published by Leapfrog Press. She has published a previous novel and 5 award-winning collections of short stories. Her memoir, Lifespan, is coming out in the spring of 2024. Wow, Molly, you have a lot going on. How are you today?
I'm okay.
Oh, okay. Actually, you know what? That is better than a lot of people. So you're doing great. You're going to read My Ex. And I love this story for several reasons, so I can't wait to hear it.
It's one of my favorite stories, and I love it too. So I'm happy, honored, and happy to be allowed to read it. My Ex. And if any of you are following, it's on page 22. My ex never finishes his sentences. He'll start off with a, "Did you see?" and then stop. When we first met, I thought it was charming. I'd prompt him, "Did I see what, darling?" Silence. After we were married, less charmed, I'd jump in with my own offerings. "Did I see the full moon last night? Did I see the red dog? Did I see the fat man in drag?" I was never right. My ex would listen, correct me, and disappear. He could literally disappear and act that should have made us money. "I think I'll go," he'd say, and I'd chip in with a hopeful, "To the store," only to hear him say, "To India." One minute he'd be standing next to me, and the next minute he'd be in a cab, heading out to some seaport, or in bed asleep, or in the garden watering the roses he claimed I never took care of. And in the end, at the lawyer's office, when I admitted that I never knew where he went, what he did, or whom he did it with, he shook his head sadly and said that was because I could not read his mind. "She's low," he said to the lawyer. Exhausted, the lawyer and I said together. "Impatient," he said. It was true, and why not? Years had rushed by, and I still didn't know him. In fact, that was what he often said to me. "You'll never know how much I love you," he'd say, and then, not unkindly, he'd laugh. After the divorce, there were sightings. A friend saw him in an art museum trying on silk scarves. My sister saw him pass her on the bridge in a silver Jaguar. A neighbor heard him talking Farsi with an Iranian rug dealer. We decided he either worked for the CIA or the FBI or the DEA or all 3 of them. Just last week, 5 years after our divorce, I bumped into him in a bookstore. He was standing in a corner reading the obituaries in the New York Times out loud to himself. He was dressed in surfer shorts and a hoodie. He had grown a mustache and had a pair of mirrored sunglasses on. "Hi," I said. He looked up, unsurprised. "Oh, hi," he said. "How are—" "I'm fine," I said. "The roses." I took a deep breath. He looked thin and raggedy. It occurred to me he might be homeless. "I'm having the Witherspoons over for lunch on Sunday," I said. "Our old neighbors. Would you like to come?" "Do they still have their 2 poodles?" "Yes." "Timing's son-in-law living with them?" "Lunch is at noon," I said, "and I never slept with their son-in-law, if that's what you're thinking." "How do you know what you're thinking? Whether he's still living with them or not?" "Noon," I repeated. I was shaking when I left. Sunday came, and of course, no ex. The Witherspoons and I had barbecue and gin and tonics, and had just settled into the living room to watch the US Open when the poodles started barking, and the son-in-law said, "There's a man in your backyard." I shrugged his hand off my thigh and stood up. My ex was in the garden watering the roses. It was as if no time had passed. I went out to him. "Did you see?" he said. "No," I said. "I didn't. Hand me that hose, please." He handed me the hose, and I aimed the nozzle straight at him, and the blast was so strong it knocked him butt down, and his fake mustache flew off. For a second, I exulted. Then, because I'm an idiot, I dropped the hose and went to help him up, but he tripped me, and I fell down hard beside him as the water spiraled fast and cold over both of us. He wrapped his arms around me and rocked us back and forth on the grass, laughing, and I felt his old male strength. and smelled his sour green apple smell. And for a second, I was almost happy again. By the time I pushed him off and shook myself and stood, of course, nothing was left but a trail of damp footsteps in the grass, a thread from his hoodie snagged on the gate, tire marks on the curb. I ran out to the street as his bike rounded the corner, took my shoe off, threw it, missed. The last thing I heard was his voice, faint on the wind. "Don't worry, dear. It's not funny," I shouted. "Over," he said, and disappeared.
I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. What you up to?
well, it's that same story is in the back of this book. So the novel, I guess they figured the novel wasn't enough. So they put two of my very short ones in the back, and My Ex is one of them.
That story is such a great example of just a dialogue that becomes like a plastic part of the story. And it's so wonderful to teach, but also hard as well, because anything anyone does is just like, oh yeah, Molly Giles has already done that. So it's like you've done something that is like really interesting with dialogue that I find always amusing, and I think we can all actually relate to it in our relationships when we finish one another's sentences. I know my mother finishes my sentences all the time, and it's never right. And I think of your story all the time. Okay, our next reader is Nicole Simonson. Nicole Simonson is down here. Nicole Simonson is a writer from Northern California. Her short stories have appeared in places like SmokeLong Quarterly, Washington Square Review, and Salamander, where she won the Fiction Prize in 2021. She has a story forthcoming in Southern Humanities Review. You can find more of her work at www.nicolesimonson.com. Hi, Nicole. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. Happy to be here. Thank you so much.
And I love the story that you're going to read. I think I should say that to about everyone's stories. And it is also, for various reasons, a story that people teach. Take it away, Nicole.
Okay, so this story is on page 231, if you're reading along. It's called How to Write a Hardship Letter. If you really want to save your house, do not tell the people at the lone workout team that your soon-to-be ex-husband has renounced all material pursuits, or that he is living in the back of the Revival movie theater in exchange for running the projector and sweeping up the popcorn. They are in the middle of an F.W. Murnau retrospective. He invites you to come to the next screening of Sunrise, but you just don't have it in you to watch the lovers reunite. He seems to have stepped into these old movies, to have turned into a black and white version of himself. He wears a black overcoat with an upturned collar and a ridiculous fedora that sits low over his forehead to hide bloodshot eyes. You will have to admit that he doesn't have a job, but do not tell the bank that he quit. And do not tell them what he told you the day he left. When you stood outside the house, the sunlight slicing your eyes like a razor, that he would never work again, that the 9-to-5 life was killing him. He didn't need much to be happy. He could live like a monk. You didn't believe him. But when you stop by the movie theater because you are lonely and miss the old talks, he will show you his makeshift cot behind the screen. He has a pillow, a mat, and a crate with a change of clothes and a copy of Don Quixote and Les Miserables, the only things he has kept from your life together. The rest he has rejected. You don't know him anymore. He might never work again or pay his fair share, but don't tell the people at the bank. If you want to avoid the filing cabinet of hopeless cases, do not tell them that your 3-year-old son is on the spectrum, that he doesn't make eye contact, that his speech is delayed, and that at night when he is finally sleeping, you wish you could slip your fingers inside his skull and massage those neurons into the right places so that in the morning the two of you could have breakfast together and have a silly conversation about who would win in a fight, a killer whale or a great white. Or why some visit the children of China, or why some birds eat other birds. And then when you drop him off to expensive school and hug him tight and whisper in his ear that you love him, he will say the words back. That is something money will never fix. Do not tell them about the other morning when you went to the river to collect water samples. You used to enjoy tracking pollutants because they were identifiable and measurable and could be contained in your tiny vials. But there, at the edge of the river, the water cold and fast and higher than usual, it all seemed a pointless exercise, the mere naming of things and nothing more. You noticed a lone seal, its black head bobbing on the surface. It seemed for you with its oily eyes. It had a message if you could just get to it. You thought of that if you walked into the water, you might slip out of your skin and become a seal too, and that you would like that life, swimming up and down the river, dining on small fish, no mortgage, no job, letting the current take you where it may. You tried to summon your old childhood belief in shapeshifters, but as usual, you hesitated a moment too long. Your boss found you and wanted to know why you only had 3 samples. What had you been doing this whole time? And you realized the spell was over, the opportunity lost. Above all, do not tell them about your newly ambiguous feelings towards the house you claim you want to save. Do not tell them that you could have packing whatever will fit in your car and driving them to Mexico or even further south to Chile or Peru, where you could live in a hut with your son. Do not tell them that the house has become a jail, that it requires you to work for it like someone on a chain gang, like a modern form of indentured servitude, or that in French, the word mortgage means death pledge. Ambiguity makes these people uncomfortable. They are bankers, after all. They like numbers and money and for things to add up. Strike up a friendship with whomever answers the special 1-800 number the bank has set up for people like you. The woman with the Southern accent is a good listener. Get her extension, call her often. You can tell by the timbre of her voice that she is a smoker and has a good 20 years on you. That's why it's okay for her to call you honey, which she does often, followed with optimistic platitudes. Coming from anyone else, these pithy sayings would drive you crazy. But from her, they're oddly reassuring. She knows, she's been there. In 1982, her house was destroyed by a tornado. In 1993, a flood. Real biblical stuff, she says. Right now, you need stories about people who rebuilt their lives from the rubble. Remember to be brief. These people don't have time for your life story, nor are they literary critics. So you may use the occasional cliche. I will get back on my feet, you could write. There are conventions to this genre, and they expect you to follow the formula, not get too inventive. That might signal an instability. Don't forget to sign your name. For fun, because nothing about this has been fun, use the wild, fake signature you practiced in junior high when you were sure you were going to be famous one day.
Love that.
Thank you.
What you up to these days, Nicole?
Well, I'm back at work teaching after having the summer off, and I've been working on a novel for like a million years. So I'm like determined to finish it this fall. That's my job. That's my goal.
Excellent. And wishing you lots of success on that. Sure. Our next reader is Pete Stevens. Pete is the author of the chapbook Tomorrow Music, Map Literary. His story, Writers, won the Craft Literary Short Fiction Contest, judged by Robert Lopez. His fiction has appeared in Agni, the Journal, and Coppernickel. He has been named as a Best American Short Stories Distinguished Story, and he has been anthologized, of course, in Flash Fiction America. He can be found online at PeteStevensFiction.com. Hi, Pete.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
and thank you, Sherry, too. That I want to throw a thanks her way as well. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, Sherry. Like, just applaud Sherry now, because Pete, this story.
Yeah.
Okay, it's gonna get spicy, everybody. All
yeah,
right.
wow. Yeah, right. I get to be the spicy boy. All right. All right. This is Beethoven's Fifth in C minor, and it is on 171 for those following along. My husband doesn't listen to the voice from my lungs or the nuance of my protest, only the music of California wine and Beethoven's Fifth in C minor. He says it has to be the fifth. He has rules, my husband. It was Beethoven at our wedding. It was Beethoven on the beach for our honeymoon. He says the fifth is a cave to crawl into, that with each listen, new cracks and gems are exposed. Now, tonight, he says it must be the fifth when the other couple comes over. We are what they call hosts. We are to be sophisticated in our debauchery. We prepare our bodies with scented soaps and limbs shaved smooth. James walks from room to room with wine glass in hand, a Sonoma Merlot, the fifth following with him as he goes. This is our first time opening ourselves to others. The couple on their way is experienced in manners of flesh and with sharing, and they assured us that everything will be fine without worry, a night of new beginnings. I am not so sure. And is it my fault? Probably yes. The song of my disdain was sung too softly, the notes discarded by my husband in a wash of wine and drips from his chin. The lights have been dimmed, the second bottle ready on the table. My eyes say no, my heart sings unheard. I cannot say what I want to say to a husband who will not listen, who is convinced of his ways and his decisions. Yes, it is true that a spark has been lost to the night. Yes, it is true that what we once had was fresh with possibility. Yet, how can the answer be my husband inside another woman while I watch? How can the answer be my lips pressed to a man I do not know? The couple, younger, in their late 20s, is soon to arrive, and my husband goes to the stereo and raises the volume. Beethoven fills the house like smoke from a fire. There is no escape. I suggest other music, maybe jazz. I say to James that jazz is sexy, mood music, that yes, Miles Davis, his trumpet is sex. My husband says jazz. He says please. He says that Beethoven's Fifth is sex and life and death. He says the fifth is perfect for our night, that the crescendo of strings will stoke the flames of our lust. I hear a knock at the door through the music, and my husband goes to answer. The couple waits, expecting on the doorstep. They enter and bring with them the smells of foreign skin. This couple, they are not shy. They remove their coats with bright smiles and laughter, suggesting it should be more than coats coming off. Together we sit at angles along the couch in the living room. My husband pours wine and speaks in hushed tones. The woman, her skirt riding higher, tells James to be quiet. The fifth gains speed. I watch as she stands before my husband as she lifts her skirt to show him her lace. She looks to me for approval, and I shift in my seat, restless. I am not sure of my place or my role. I have no desire to dance for this other man, to show him inside. I stand with bottleneck in hand and continue to watch. The man removes his shirt, his chest thick with black hair. The woman straddles James and lowers her lips to his neck. I turn and walk away. None of the bodies on the couch notice my absence or my advance towards the stereo. The fifth still climbs, ever higher, and I end it. I turn the knob until the thump of electronic dance music erupts from the speakers. I turn it up and up and up. The bass drums kick and snap with the pounding of my heart. I close my eyes and begin to dance, my hips rocking with the beat. It is then that my husband listens. It is then that he comes to me with palms upturned.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wonderful. What are you up to these days, Pete?
I'm teaching, I'm writing my weird little stories, and hopefully getting enough weird little stories together to make a long story collection. So I had my chat, but now I'm working on the full length.
Excellent. Well, we can't wait for it.
Thank you.
Our last reader is Gwen E. Kirby. Thank you for waiting so long, Gwen, hanging around. I know it's difficult to go last. I hate going last when it's a live reading because I can't drink until I read. So it's like if I raise my hand, I want to go first. But Gwen E. Kirby is the author of the debut collection, Shit Cassandra Saw. She has an MFA from Johns Hopkins University and a PhD from the University of Cincinnati. Her stories appear in One Story, Tin House, Guernica, Mississippi Review, Ninth Letter, SmokeLong Quarterly, and elsewhere. Currently, she is the Associate Director of Programs and Finance for the Swanee Writers Conference in my state. How are you doing in Tennessee?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I haven't been there in a while, but I'll be there late in September. I'll be there later this month. Okay. Well, you're going to read a story that has one of the longest titles we've ever published. So take it away, Gwen.
All right. All right. So this is shit Cassandra saw that she didn't tell the Trojans because at that point, fuck them anyway. Light bulbs, penguins, Bud Light, Velcro, claymation, the moon made out of cheese, tap dancing, yoga, Twizzlers, Mountain Dew, Jell-O, colors she can eat with her eyes, methamphetamine, t-shirts, thin and soft, they pass from person to person, men to women, each owner slipping into different teams, Yankees, Warriors, and out again with no bloodshed, no thought to allegiance or tribe. And the words, profusions of nonsense. The weather is here, wish you were fine. Chemists do it on the table periodically. Cut class, not frogs. Words everywhere and for everyone, for nothing but a joke, for the pleasure of them. A world so careless with its words. And not just on t-shirts. Posters, water bottles, newspapers, junk mail, bumper stickers, lists. Top 10 Halloween costumes for your dog is modeled by this corgi. Top 10 times a monkey's facial expression perfectly summed up your thoughts on NAFTA. Top 10 things your boyfriend wishes you would do in bed, but is too afraid to say. Cassandra has not noticed a lack of men telling women what to do. Perhaps this will be a pleasure of the future, a male desire that goes unspoken, a desire that is only a desire and not a command. Then there are the small words, the private words, hidden within romance novels, mysteries, thrillers, science fiction, fantasy, heaving bosoms, astronauts, and 8 men, pulp paperbacks that live brief but fiery lives, the next torrent of words so swift behind they must sell or be destroyed, only enough space on the shelf for the new. And lives, of course. Cassandra would rather see only the fictions, the objects, the colored plastic oddities of the future, but she must see lives as well. Here are 2 little girls. They sit in the dirt and dig at a boulder. When it is finally unearthed, the possibilities, a passage to the underworld, a buried treasure, a colony of fairies, anything but dirt. It is essential that they will never succeed, never dig up the boulder, and of course they don't. Their plastic shovels move the dirt aside. New dirt, dusty and thin, blows across their eyes. One of the girls becomes an engineer. One is raped by her college boyfriend. The second girl will run a bakery on an island where she loves to hike. She will have 3 children, all boys, and she will die when she is quite old and quite unwilling to go. Her boys will have lives too. Everyone does. Lives on fast forward, on silent, even the best life, even her own, swiftly boring. Cassandra is tired of running at wooden horses with nothing but the flame of the smallest match. She is tired of speaking to listening ears, the listening ears of the men who think her mad drive her to madness. She wishes she could move far away to an island and own a bird. She will never do this because she knows she never does. It is said that Apollo gave Cassandra the gift of prophecy. This is true. It is said that when she refused his advances, he spit in her mouth so that she would never again be believed. A virgin, the same as a seduced woman, the same as a violated woman, the same as a willing woman, all women opening their mouths to watch snakes slither out and away. Cassandra is done. Full the fuck up, soul weary. Still, as Troy is sacked, as she clings to the cold marble legs of the statue of Athena in the sacred temple, she cannot accept what she knows to be true. That soon Ajax will arrive and rape her. He will smash the statue of the goddess she worships and curse his own life. And worse, her goddess will not help her, will turn her shattered face away. Cassandra will be carried across the sea, made another man's concubine, bear twin boys, and be killed by Clytemnestra. But before this comes to pass, there are visions Cassandra burns to share with the women of Troy. The women of Troy might listen. They know that Cassandra's curse is their curse as well, that Apollo spit in her mouth, but it was only spit. Here's what she might show them: tampons, jeans, washing machines, the cordless Hitachi magic wand, elastic hair ties, mace, epidurals. And here is the best thing of all, the thing that makes Cassandra smile as the men storm her temple, exactly as she has always known they would. Someday, Trojan will not be synonymous with bravery or failure, betrayal or endurance, or the most beautiful woman, or the most foolish of men. A Trojan will be carried in every hopeful wallet, extracted with abashed confidence, slipped over the shaft, rolled to the base. Perhaps the Trojan men would laugh if they knew, or be humiliated, or pause to think about the indifference of history and the hubris of the man who hopes to be remembered. But the women, once they saw that blue streamer unfurl, the women would rejoice, would wave it over their heads like a new flag, like a promise of better things to come. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. I'm tempted to leave it there with better things to come. But thank you. Every time I read that story, I find something new about it. Such layered work. Everyone here, thank you so much for all the work that you've done in Flash, improving the form. You've all really, really added to the form. Gwen, what are you up to these days?
Now that the conference I run is done, I am trying to work on a novel and writing Flash fiction. So
excellent.
It's good.
We can't wait for more. And I just saw that Shake Cassandra Saw is in another language now.
It's been really cool. It's been translated into 5 languages. It just came out in Spanish.
Okay, that's what I thought. It was Spanish. Okay, good. I'll go pick it up. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, for staying because we went a little bit over, and thank you to the ones, especially at the end, who had to wait so long to read. Flash Fiction America is available at all quality bookstores, so go get your copy. We may have a couple of more copies to give away, and so we'll be thinking about the people who were here, and if Norton gives us a couple more copies, we'll pass them along to someone. Okay, thank you so much, everybody, and for those of you in SmokeLong Fitness, Gwen, I'll see you in the workshop. Bye-bye, everybody.